Oh, jeez.
That is a great start.
We're rusty.
That is a fantastic start.
Happy New Year, James. Hello and welcome to the 73rd episode of Total Pop Mode, your weekly comedy gaming podcast. My name is Will, and I also go by Hoodafunk, and I'm joined here by my good friend, co-host, and fellow gaming enthusiast, James, aka Mr. Bames.
What's going on, guys?
Coming up this episode, we've got our weekly regular games catch-up, followed by the weekly gaming news, where we discuss 2 record-breaking stories this week, and we'll round off the episode with the long-awaited return to Completionist Corner. And what better way to make a return than to go back to the series that started the whole thing? That's right, we're kicking off the new year with part 1 of the 3rd and final chapter in the Mass Effect trilogy.
Hell yeah!
Oh, that was a long sentence. Before all of that, it's time for the socials. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pop Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on X by searching for @TotalPopMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at Hoodafunk on X, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk. Okay, James, as is tradition, we're kicking off the episode with a catch-up. What have you been playing over the last couple of weeks?
I guess the first thing is very, very quickly touch on, won't even go into it. A little bit of gaming news from over Christmas. I did manage to get my 100% back in Wolong. Nice, lovely little DLC. Finished that up.
Yeah, polish off the DLC. Good.
I played some more Pokemon Violet when I went and visited my mum over Christmas. Started that again. Finished that again. Very good.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Did the post-game this time too.
Did you not bother with the post-game the first time around?
Nah, because I kind of just put it down after that.
Okay.
But I got through this a lot quicker because I didn't spend ages looking for Pokemon of the right nature with the right ability and all that good stuff, because I know you can change it later. So, which I didn't know the first time.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Fine.
Just got through it much quicker. But good times. Thought about buying the DLC, didn't.
Right, yeah. I have heard the DLC came out fairly recently.
The second part, yeah.
I was wondering if you might get back into it because it was near Christmas time.
Yeah, I thought about it, but I didn't actually go back to it. But that was then, this is now. Over the last week or so, I've played a couple of games. I tried out Halls of Torment, one of the Christmas gifts you got me.
Oh, nice one. Okay. How did you find it?
It's Vampire Survivors.
That's very good.
But I don't think it's quite as good, personally.
Right, okay.
There's a lot of facets to it that make it interesting and different enough, but it is Vampire Survivors.
Fine.
It's kind of reminds me a lot of Diablo 1 in terms of its presentation, that sort of graphical style, and the way that at least one of the dungeons, or maybe 2 of the dungeons that I've played, I've only unlocked 4 so far. I've only put 6 hours into it, so but it's quite good. But it's got that feel that I really like. The class systems that you get kind of similar to that. Instead of named characters like you had in Vampire Survivors, you get like the mage, the archer, the wizard. It's things like that. The quest system, which is something that I know you sort of mentioned, you'd be quite interested to see what that's about.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to the achievements that are in Vampire Survivors. I don't think it's called achievements. I can't remember what it's called. But things like get to level 80 with such and such a character.
Sure thing.
Kill this many characters with this weapon. It is things like that, dressed up a little bit more questy, which is kind of cool. Okay. And you know how you get random encounters in some of the Vampire Survivors levels where you might randomly unlock a character by doing some shit?
Yeah,
there's that sort of thing as well, but if you find something like a tome or a quest giver, it kind of pauses your game and brings up a little text box window type thing. Like do back in the day. So it's got an RPG feel to it.
Yes, yeah.
But a lot of that is probably marketing and promotion and stuff. It is basically Vampire Survivors, which isn't a bad thing.
It's Vampire Survivors with a bit of a Diablo wraparound, even down to the UI and things like that of the game. It does look I imagine it would look very familiar to anyone that's played Diablo before.
I think the health bar, like little circular orb thing, is basically copy and paste.
It's a dead giveaway. Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. Like, if you enjoy Vampire Survivors, you definitely enjoy this.
Right,
I personally prefer Vampire Survivors. The soundtrack's a lot more catchier. It's a little bit quicker in terms of action.
Fair enough.
And the powers that you can unlock I feel are more impressive in Vampire Survivors. You get the same sort of thing in Halls of Torment. Like, there's one where you can get orbs floating around you, very similar to the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
There's like something that's radiance, which is like a circle around you that every 5 seconds, let's say for the sake of argument, like emits a flash and hurts enemies. It's basically the garlic. But they do have a lot of similarities, but they're different enough, and it's quite a cheap game, so definitely worth that price.
Sounds like if you're craving more Vampire Survivors and you've done everything there is to do in that game, this one might be worth a look.
It's definitely worth a look.
What about the bosses in the game? Are there any bosses that you show down against?
So in terms of the bosses, I've only survived one level to beyond the time limit.
Okay, yeah.
And it's kind of like the Reaper that comes at the end of that, but it's called, I think, a Lord of something. So the first one's the Lord of Pain. I think it was. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's like that, but it's the same sort of thing. One enemy comes in. It doesn't quite come straight to your character and just instantly kill you. It tries to kill you with magic and stuff.
Fine, okay.
So it is more of a boss fight than a Reaper that wants to end your run sort of thing.
Sure thing. It sounds like you've got a bit more of a chance of surviving rather than instantly dying in your early run-throughs of Vampire Survivors.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, if you can make it to the time limit in the first dungeon, which is the one I did, the final boss bit isn't as hard as the Reaper stuff. But what I will say is it does seem like the waves of enemies get a lot bigger quicker in Halls of Torment.
Right, okay.
So it kind of balances in that way, I think. It's slightly slower paced, but you probably get more enemies on your screen at once. But again, it could just be a trick of the dimensions. Who knows?
Sure thing. Oh, well, I mean, it's definitely intrigued me, man. I think I will absolutely pick this one up for myself at some point. It's been on my list for a while now. I'm not quite sure why I didn't pick it up for myself at the same time that I got it for you.
You were using me as a test guinea pig, mate.
Yeah, you were kind of like, I was dipping my toes into the water via you.
Yeah.
I've still got quite a few things to do in Vampire Survivors with the DLC. And because I picked it up on PC with all of the DLC, I think that's probably the way to go. And I'll have to kind of start from the beginning again.
Well, yeah.
I did dabble with it a month or two ago, but didn't get very far at all compared to the mobile playthrough, which is like completely finished at this point.
Yeah. Hey, if you ever want that change of scenery, as you said earlier, it's a good alternative.
Nice one, man. Have you played anything else this week?
So the only other game that I'll talk about is a game called Stray Blade, which is kind of a Souls-like-y type game, come RPG. Kind of think of a Souls-like in the style of Kingdoms of Amalur.
Okay. Sounds interesting. I'm intrigued. What's it like?
It was good fun, man. I did finish it. It is not the highest budget, I wouldn't say, but they've done very well with it. I think it's very charming. You know, I love that style of graphics anyway. I like Kingdoms of Amalur a lot. Combat smooth, very cool. The way that you level up is quite interesting as well. You don't have stats like vitality, strength, dexterity, or whatever.
Right. Okay.
You get various weapons in the game and you have to master them to unlock a skill point associated with them. And you unlock weapons by beating loads of enemies or finding them in chests and whatnot. And then there's legendary weapons that you find sort of scattered around later on. It's a Metroidvania kind of thing as well. So you're constantly going back to areas when you unlock new powers and things like that.
Okay.
And the only skill points you have are things like increased damage on your light attack, increased damage on your heavy attack, increased damage on your special attack. Blocking doesn't take as much stamina. There are health and energy ones as well, but it's more things like that. And then you unlock other, like, very few other things later down the line.
Sounds a bit more like what I would call like a early God of War skill tree type thing rather than actually having attributes.
Yeah, there's no attribute screen at all.
Yeah, it sounds much more like a kind of an action-based style skill system in the game where you're just kind of picking from various perks and upgrades to get rather than boosting stats to level with other ones. Not so much number crunching. That's going to appeal to some people.
Yeah, and you can max out very easily.
Right, okay. So you're clearly intended to fill out everything as well.
I think if you kill enough stuff, if you tried to rush the game, you probably wouldn't hit everything. But the order you can do stuff in is dictated by what order you find the weapons as well, which can make it quite interesting.
Okay.
But I found all the weapons and unlocked, so I managed to get a full skill tree anyway. Doesn't make that much difference when you get higher in levels, honestly. The initial ones make a huge difference to your damage output.
Do you have any weapons that you favour particularly?
I had my favourites, yeah, but because you're constantly switching to level up when you find new ones, you end up trying all of them, so it's quite easy to find favourites. My favourite one is called the Knight's Sword, and it was a sword and shield type deal.
All right, okay.
It was just good because it had a decent enough range, did quite a good amount of damage, was relatively quick to swing, and had, I think, a few less frames on its animation, which meant you could then dodge or block quicker. Because the combat style is Souls-like. You sort of quick step, time your dodges perfectly, you earn back more energy, and energy being stamina. And yeah, it was quite good fun. The bosses weren't very hard. The final boss was quite hard, but the bosses leading up to it, I did them all first time, I think. No, that's a lie. I did all of them bar one first time. And the only reason I didn't do the other one that I didn't do first time is because I didn't get the gimmick straight away.
Right, okay.
And then the final boss, as I say, was a challenge. Died to that a few times. So it felt good when I finished it. And the story is quite nice, I thought. Very, very briefly, you're a character called Farron West, and you are an explorer, and you stumble across this valley that everyone's been looking for. You find this huge source of energy. It kind of explodes when you try and walk through it. And you get a stone embedded in your chest, and that's how you can revive constantly. That's the law of that reason. And you're now linked to the valley, and then adventures ensue from there. So yeah, it's quite a fun little game. I probably spent about 20 hours in it. I did restart once because of course I did. Would recommend if you find it on sale, or even if you want to pay full price. Then I think it's like a £25 game maybe. Would recommend.
And the name of it, once again, for the people?
The name of it was Stray Blade.
There you go. Give it a go.
But that's about me for my catch up this week, man. How about you? What have you been playing?
So this week I'm still finishing off one of the games that I got for Christmas this year, which was the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 on the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, nice, yes.
I have heard that there was some reported issues with the performance, and I'm pretty pleased to say that I haven't really noticed anything thus far. Though, admittedly, when I went back and played the original UK release of Metal Gear Solid 1, for some reason it felt like the frame rate was lower on that than it was when I played the Integral Edition. And the Integral Edition is something that I wanted to talk about because it's a version of Metal Gear Solid 1 that I never had the opportunity to play. It was a Japanese-only release. You're able to have both the Japanese and the English subtitles if you want, so I was able to switch it back to English so I could still understand what was going on.
Was the voice acting in Japanese though still?
You can download the Japanese version, I believe, but I did keep the American audio version that I had. You need to download a separate Japanese audio pack for a lot of these games on the edition, and it's kind of treated as DLC that you can get. It's obviously free, but you do need the game to have access to it.
I imagine that'd be quite amusing.
I would really like to go back and play those games in Japanese because they're so familiar to me in English that I'd be really curious to see what the voice actors sounded like in the kind of original interpretation of what the game would be. I have heard, obviously, what Snake sounds like in the past. I have watched Japanese versions, but going back and being able to hear some of the voices that I recognise so well, like Naomi Hunter, Colonel Campbell, Otacon, being able to hear what those guys were voiced like in the Japanese version would be really cool. It's something that I haven't delved into just yet, but I'll definitely be doing that at some point in the future on one of my subsequent runs. Because if anyone knows me, they know that I really like to go back to these games and play them over repeatedly, especially all the different versions that I can now get my hands on thanks to this collection.
Yeah, if there was ever a version that had an extra minute of dialogue, Will would play through it like ridiculously until he found that extra minute.
No doubt. Yeah, it's just not enough for me at this point to go back and watch a YouTube video about those different outcomes. I want to kind of experience all of it for myself. So going back and playing the Integral Edition on Metal Gear Solid 1 was a real blast. Very, very familiar territory there. I think I completed it in about 3.5 hours, skipping through quite a lot of the dialogue and just kind of proceeding through the game. And like I said, being able to play it on the Integral Edition was a real blast because it unlocks additional features in the game, like a first-person mode that you can use to walk around the levels. The control scheme on it isn't particularly well suited. Placing yourself in first person all the time in Metal Gear Solid 1 definitely wasn't an intended feature.
Yeah, you'd struggle to look around corners, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's things like that, as well as just your overall movement. You can't strafe while you're walking, so you just have to kind of walk forward and steer a bit like a car.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely not the way to play when you're in an environment full of enemies, but it is really novel to walk around the environments and see it from a constant changing first-person perspective.
Yeah, see all those pixels a lot closer.
Honestly, I feel like even though the resolution of that game is incredibly low, I think that it has aged remarkably well when you take into account things like the supremely high quality of the voice acting that I mentioned before, along with the cinematography of the cutscenes. It does look very low resolution, but I think that it still does stand up to the test of time in a lot of ways. So after blasting my way through Metal Gear Solid 1, I moved on to Metal Gear Solid 2.
He's insatiable, people.
Yeah, I just couldn't get enough of it, really. It took me a short while to adapt because there are some minor control changes between 1 and 2, most notably around the way that you can use cover in the game, in the way that you peek around corners as well. It controls slightly differently, as well as the fact that you've got a few more movement options in Metal Gear Solid 2. You can now do like a forward roll or like a forward spin, And you've also got the ability to hang off of railings and ledges and drop down and re-grab ledges and do a bit of mantling stuff. So that makes quite a difference in terms of the gameplay and some of the approaches that you can use to sneak around levels. I was really enjoying myself in Metal Gear Solid 2 because I was playing it as if it was my first time ever playing and trying to kind of discover things that on a usual run I might normally just walk past in the objective of just being quick and getting through the level.
I see you took your time a lot more with this one rather than the complete blast through one.
Definitely,
you were stopping to smell the roses this time.
Yeah. Mostly because I feel like there really isn't anything in 1 that I've yet to discover. And to be fair, that's probably true for 2 as well. However, it was a bit more of like kind of reminding myself of just how much attention to detail they put into the game. One of the things I noticed, for instance, is you'll remember from the first game, guards will detect your footprints in the snow if you walk around. And that was a really impressive feature to me back in the PlayStation 1 days. And that is obviously replicated in this one because they can see your wet footprints. But there's also things in the environment that you can disturb, like, for instance, plant pots and magazines. They'll actually notice if those have been beaten up, and they'll call in to say that something suspicious has been going on.
Yeah, well, if you're beating up a plant pot, that's pretty suspicious.
Yeah, it is slightly odd behaviour, I will admit.
We've all done it in a game, don't we? Just walking past and punching something. Just like, f*** you, wall.
I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to get across here is the fact that in a lot of modern day games, you will do stuff like you can shoot a plant pot or you can put a bullet hole in a wall, and the guards will continue to walk past and won't notice so long as you haven't done it within their immediate sight.
Oh, it's because they disappear after a while.
Yeah. But in Metal Gear Solid 2, they really do react to that stuff. So if you have missed them with a shot, and even whether they're not necessarily in earshot of the bullet whizzing past them, they can still notice the fact that there's a bullet hole or a crack in the glass or magazines have been disturbed and things like that.
That's quite cool, to be fair.
It's things like that I started to really appreciate and that I don't necessarily do typically because I'm quite focused on moving through the games quite quickly. But stopping to smell the roses or maybe just beat the shit out of the roses, it was actually a nice reminder of just how much detail there is in the game.
Always good when you can sort of get a new playthrough almost of a game that you know so well.
There's a whole lot of nostalgia going into these games, as well as some small features that I never really did as a kid that I've actually gone back and finally completed now. There's an opportunity in the game for you to find a shaver in Metal Gear Solid 2 as Raiden when you're playing in the second chapter of the game. And you give it to Solid Snake at a certain point in the game, and it just means that later on, he's clean shaven as opposed to having the new beard that he has in Metal Gear Solid 2. So if you give him the shaver, he more closely resembles the Solid Snake in the first game. And it's just tiny things like that I have heard about on YouTube. But like I said, I want to go back and see those things for myself.
That's the most Kojima thing I've ever heard, though. Doesn't add anything except for a different character model, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like a nod to his previous games,
exactly.
Which is extremely Kojima-like. Yeah. So I've yet to start Metal Gear Solid 3 or any of the other titles on that collection. I'm still playing through the very final chapters of number 2 and just having a blast as I always do. Nothing really new to report here. Just going back to one of my classic favourites.
Metal Gear good.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess, if anything, I don't necessarily make a tradition out of it, but I know that you play Pokemon for sort of like, I guess like nostalgia reasons around Christmas time. I kind of had like a similar kind of thing with Metal Gear Solid as well. It's just it's an old, comfortable game to get into by the fire.
No, I feel that.
And other than that, I will say that although I haven't played any games that you got me, I have played one game that I got you.
Oh, nice.
I have actually played a little bit of Lethal Company since we last spoke. And having a good time with it. It's pretty spooky. It's very fun to play with a buddy when you're using the in-game audio because it is fully surround. As in, if you're treating it with a pair of headphones, it's actually a very good way to locate your teammates because I can specifically tell if your voice is coming from behind me or to the left or right of me. It's all proximal to distance, so the further you get away from me, it fades out. And also, if you travel into another area that I'm not in, then I just won't be able to hear you unless we're operating walkie-talkies that you can purchase in the game.
That's quite smart.
Also, playing with my buddy Liam, shout out Liam, he got attacked by like a giant, what looked like a cross between a centipede and like a grub or some sort of worm. It wrapped around his face, and then all I could hear was his muffled speech as opposed to regular voice. So there are different areas in the game that will change your voice as well. If you're in like a echoey area, your voice will echo. And the fact that the enemies will smother you and stop you from being able to call out, I think is a really cool use of some of the in-game voice chat stuff. We did kind of cover it on the Christmas special, but I'll just explain to give people who haven't listened to that a quick bit of context. The main aim of the game is your space astronauts landing on moons, gathering resources, and there is a bunch of spooky enemies and deadly things that you can encounter. Pretty much everything that you encounter that is new should be assumed as deadly in this game. It really is kind of like the worst occupation you can imagine, going around scrapping on some of these moons. And that is your goal, is to collect scrap and bring it back to your ship in order to meet your 3 or 4 day quota.
And if you fail your quota, you die.
Yeah, they shoot you out on airlock.
Yeah.
If you
It's cutthroat, mate. You need to be making money.
Yeah, the company is brutal in this game. That said, it is a fun game to play. It's a really good one to play with mates. We'll definitely have to link up at some point and put that on. Good times guaranteed.
Nice too, and by the sounds of it, a worthy winner of the More Fun with Friends Steam Award.
So I'm sure we'll pick that one up together in the future, but in the meantime as well, I'm definitely going to be delving into that off-pod as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing what different monsters I can encounter, because there's a lot of stuff that I've seen in the promos that I've actually yet to encounter, so looking forward to finding out just what this game's fully about. I feel like I've only scratched the surface. But that is me for the catch-up this week as well, so it's time to move on to the weekly gaming news. So our first story of this week, a gamer in the United States of America has beaten Tetris for the first time.
Oh, I didn't even know Tetris could be beaten. I thought it's a game that just relentlessly beats you.
Well, that may be the common opinion of the layman to Tetris. However, Tetris has actually been technically beaten times before in the game, depending on your perspective of it, and we'll delve into that a little bit just in this story. But before we get into that, I'll just go over the top. A 13-year-old that goes by the name of Willis Gibson has become the first human player to ever beat Tetris since its release over 30 years ago. Now, this headline is somewhat misleading in the sense that it's actually impossible to beat Tetris, as it was designed to be an endless game. The actual achievement is in being the first human player to get so far in the 1985 version of the beloved classic that caused the game to actually crash.
And that's what I was referring to at the start there. You know, it's not designed to be beaten, it just beats you eventually. No. Yeah.
That is definitely supposed to be the kind of the issue of the game. And it actually gets to the point where roughly around level 29 in the game, whilst using conventional control methods, it's almost impossible to beat the game because you literally just can't move the blocks left or right enough, fast enough, considering the speed that they're dropping. But for years now, people have managed to figure out ways to get past those issues in the game. And obviously, a lot of people are playing more modern versions, which fixed some of the issues that the original game had. This is a run on the original Tetris, warts and all.
Nice.
Being able to play so far into the game actually renders the vanilla game's inbuilt scoreboard to become useless, as the highest score possible in this version is 999,999. The counter, limited to a maximum of 6 digits, can no longer count any higher. There are ways to go above a score of 999,999, although this requires the use of a Game Genie or other software to change the code of the game, allowing scores of over 1 million to be represented using letters as well as numbers. Although the average person as a new player is unlikely to find achieving a score of over 100,000 an easy task, Willis, who goes by Blue Scooty on YouTube, was able to not only set the line world record, the level world record, but also caused the game to implode by sheer skill at the game in just under 39 minutes.
Real bad man.
The game itself crashes when the line of code used to dictate the overall score in the game becomes too complicated, and therefore the game is unable to calculate a score without the action timing out, scrambling the code of the game and causing it to crash. For anyone who's interested in further details of how that works, there's actually a really great video on YouTube by a guy named Hydrant Dude, who can explain a lot better than I can. So this is actually a very impressive feat for a gamer to be able to beat the scores of several well-known Tetris players such as Pixelandy and Eric ICX, and even more impressive given his interest in the game is only really documented back to 2021, with his scores reaching professional levels back in February of 2023.
He's a hacker, mate.
he's using aim bots.
Yeah, it's just he's just using
got
a
wall
task
hacks
machine.
on his Tetris.
It's just tasks. That's all it is.
So this is actually a score set by a human for the first time. Obviously, AI has been able to perform this action way before this. This is the first time that a human has ever been able to set all of those records whilst simultaneously crashing the game due to a score that is so high that the game can no longer compute it and blows itself up.
Yeah. Pretty impressive.
I would say that pretty much constitutes beating the game, perhaps more so than any other game in the history of games. That really is beating the game. That is destroying the game, quite literally.
The real question is, Will, did he get end credits?
There were not end credits.
Then he didn't finish the game.
Yeah.
Case closed. Clearly getting a score of 999,999 and probably more is still fucking impressive, let's be real.
Way more, infinitely more. He, I think that his actual record was something like 6 or maybe even 8 million.
Not on the original Tetris, right?
Yeah, on the original Tetris. It's no longer able to count the score, but you are able to use software running alongside it to count the score beyond that. As I said before, the timer on the score is literally 6 digits maximum, so you can only get that 999,999 as a pure maximum in terms of the number. But if you can use software alongside it, it can calculate the score that you're racking up still.
Oh, fair. Well, yeah. The point still stands. Even getting to that number is still impressive.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. There's very few people in the world that can max out Tetris.
Yeah, geez. 1 million points in Tetris, and you're saying it goes up to like 6 million potentially? Like, respect.
Props to that young man.
Yeah. I think I got like 400,000 once, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. That's probably not true, but I feel like I got quite a high score back in the day that was like nothing, not even close to that shit, you know?
So I did actually try and look before the podcast to figure out what an average Joe Tetris score is. And it was actually kind of around what you were saying. I was seeing anywhere from like as low as 12,000 being pretty good for a new player, all the way up to around the 400,000 mark.
Oh, fair.
That was genuinely the range
fair.
Of average Joe Tetris players.
Oh, fair. Maybe I did then, but fucking over double that score, which I thought I was the best player ever when I did that.
Cool. And that one weirdly seems to have kind of broken its way into the mainstream stories as well. I actually first heard about this on the BBC, and it just seems to have kind of worked its way into the mainstream. I think because there was a Sky News presenter that started talking shit about how it wasn't a like worthy goal for a child to set sort of thing, and she was kind of like downplaying it and kind of being a bit sucky about it. And yeah, I think there was quite a lot of backlash against her as well, which she is probably still perplexed about. But anyway, moving on, I think it's time for Article 2 of this week. So it was a record year for Steam as well in 2023 as a result of 14,532 games that were released on the platform.
Nice.
What is it with all these numbers? I'm being forced to read a lot of difficult numbers this week.
Oh,
I wish I could blame it on anyone except myself. I was the one that scripted this week. So. Yeah, what was I thinking?
So later on we're only playing Mass Effect 3. You're good.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, I can count to 3. I think we're okay. Now, as we're probably all aware, a large volume of these 14,532 titles are likely cheaply made shovelware, as well as various reincarnations of adult games involving sexy elves and fairies. Nonetheless, this is still a record-breaking number.
What, you mean 14,532?
That is a big number, James. It sounds like it would be a record-breaking number.
Yeah, it's a lot of games.
Steam actually seems to have increased its offerings of new games year on year, with 2023 being its biggest year yet. 2023 also marked the year where Steam celebrated its 20th year of service as a storefront for its games.
Damn.
To compare to the 14,532 games released in 2023, 2022 delivered 12,561 new games.
Well, so you're telling me in 2023, 14,532 new games were released as opposed to 2022 when 12,561 new games were released?
Exactly, James.
Damn.
And 2023 marked the 5th year in a row of an increase of new games on the platform. And with over 110 titles already released in 2024, will the trend continue?
Is that true?
Yeah.
We're 5 days in.
Yeah.
And at the time of recording, and 110 games have already been released.
Like I said, man, it's all like weird succubus games and furry shit. I guarantee.
You haven't looked. I guarantee. I assume. Yeah.
I assume. This isn't. Yeah. My wish list is not preoccupied mostly with weird stuff like that.
To be fair, the other thing is mobile games, because they're, I imagine, very easy to transfer onto PC, particularly Android stuff.
You're probably right, yeah. Like I said, the other small portion of those 110 games is most likely shovelware.
Yeah, exactly. Still, though, that's pretty mad. They've gone up by, just under 2,000 games, or just over 2,000 games from 2022. As in, they've done that number again, plus another couple of thousand. It's like...
Yeah, oh yeah.
Insane.
Pretty wild. Okay, so with that very numbery article out of the way, it's time to move on to our third and final article of the day. Just hours following the expiration of the copyright for early versions of Disney's Mickey Mouse, we're getting a Mickey Mouse horror game. The copyright for the 1928 Disney short film Steamboat Willie expired on New Year's Day of 2024. The film is a black and white short film featuring early non-speaking versions of Mickey and Minnie Mouse. Despite Disney's best efforts to extend the term before expiry, US law only permits copyright to be held for 95 years, meaning that early versions of Mickey and Minnie Mouse are now within the public domain, and the public are able to use these characters without the need to seek permission or pay a license cost. Mate, I've got a great idea for a new host for Total Pod Mode. I think we can work in a little Mickey Mouse here and there. How's your Mickey Mouse? Well, actually, no, to be honest with you, he's not supposed to speak. This is an early version of Mickey Mouse, so we just need to work in a bunch of stupid cartoon sound effects to really sell it.
And to be fair, and one of the points I'm going to make about this and how it's not quite as big as everyone seems to think is you won't be able to call it Mickey Mouse, right? Because Mickey Mouse will be trademarked by Disney. There's absolutely no way that they haven't got a trademark for that. You'll be able to use the character image, I'm sure, but you'll have to call it like Minky Mouse or something. You know, you'll have to do something clever with it. There's no way you can call it Mickey. There's no way.
I don't think he was actually known as Mickey Mouse back in Steamboat Willie. I don't think that was...
Yeah, that's also a good point.
So I think that that's another side of it as well.
Yeah.
And also, from my understanding, is you can't even have Minky Mouse in your show that sounds like Mickey Mouse, because I imagine that the voice is still trademarked as well. You would have to do something visually with Mickey Mouse to make him seem different from the Disney version as well.
You'd have to give him a fucking deep voice, like make him proper gruff.
And given, just to bring us back on topic, the content of this game, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they've done some sort of monstrous version of Mickey Mouse.
Zombie Mouse. So tell us about this game, man. I'm intrigued. What's it saying?
So the video game, developed and published by Nightmare Forge, is known as Infestation Origins.
Of course it is. Again, that's the most Disney thing, yes.
Well, I mean, it's exactly as you said. Yeah. They can't call this game the Mickey Mouse horror game.
Exactly. But that's what it'll be known as colloquially.
Yeah, absolutely. The title is listed on Steam with a nebulous 2024 release date, at which point it will enter its early access stage. And if you actually look on the early access page, they say that they want the game to be fully ready and releasing in a polished state within the next 6 to 12 months following the early access period. The game pitches itself as a co-op horror in which you're an exterminator treating sinister infestations caused by twisted versions of classic characters and urban legends. Suffice to say, it sounds like Mickey Mouse won't necessarily be the only enemy we encounter in this game, and I'm actually wondering if we'll also be fighting, or more likely running, from a twisted version of Winnie the Pooh as well, considering he also entered the public domain back in 2022. I mean, that was one that they actually did follow up with a horror movie based on Winnie the Pooh, releasing some mixed reviews, I'll say.
Yeah, oh yeah, and, that's, yeah.
Also following this news, it's not just the video game, there's also 2 Mickey Mouse horror movies on their way. But given the video game nature and focus of this podcast, I figured I'd focus on the video game instead.
Makes sense. Yeah, I just had a quick look on the Steam page there. Hilariously to me, it says similar to Remnant.
Oh, really? Okay. If you liked Remnant, you like this. There you go.
Yeah, it's just like, okay.
A bold recommendation.
I don't think that's going to be true, looking at what the game looks like. But hey, that looks like quite a bit of fun. It's not as a Mickey Mouse sole focus by the looks of it. As you say, it looks like there's a lot of other things. And
yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what they come up with. When does Dumbo expire? That would be a good little DLC, wouldn't it?
They are actually focusing on doing chapters for this game as well, so you might have correctly identified there that they may well be waiting for future IPs to collapse.
Well, weren't all those early Disney films like all done within like 6 years of each other or something? So there is going to be a stage where you're just going to have yearly updates where it's just going to be adding characters. This time it's Sword in the Stone. This is, Fantasia would be pretty dope to do a horror game about.
You're probably right, yeah. And I guess obviously Pinocchio must have fallen into that category, what with Lies of P as well.
Maybe. Although, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. There was already an Alice in Wonderland horror game, wasn't there?
Yeah, so there's probably a lot of actual IPs out there that we just don't even know about that are already available for anyone to use. They're kind of in the public domain.
Or they were licensed. I don't know with some of them. That's the thing. So I would have thought Alice in Wonderland came out after Steamboat Willie. So it's probably licensed in that example, but the precedent is there for these Disney horror games, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
100%. I'm totally here for it. So, early footage of this game shows a hazard suit-clad protagonist armed with fumigator guns seeking to defeat an evil horde in what appears to be a shop warehouse, before a twisted version of Mickey Mouse sneaks up and presumably eliminates the player. It'll be interesting to see how this one turns out. Will it be a new horror hit matching up to the likes of Five Nights at Freddy's and Lethal Company? Or is this a rushed and low-effort cash grab hoping to build off of the name of an already well-established character? I, for one, have my suspicions which one it might be, but only time will tell.
Yeah, pretty much agree. We'll see.
With that said, I think it's time that we moved on to Completionist Corner. Here we go for the Completionist's Corner. Corner. So, before we cover the events of Mass Effect 3, let's cover some of the key events in Mass Effect 2. Commander Shepard, who is the hero of our story, is aided by a mysterious organisation known as Cerberus to travel through space to defeat an evil enemy known as the Collectors, after they had begun abducting humans from colony planets. On arrival at the Collector base, Shepard and their crew discover the Collectors have been working in alliance with an ancient race called the Reapers. In the events of Mass Effect 1, we learn that the Reapers are a highly advanced sentient race of synthetic organic alien starships who are seeking to wipe out all life from the galaxy every 50,000 years.
The Collectors were working with the Reapers to abduct humans in order to create a new Reaper hybrid crossed with the human race. Shepard and their crew defeated the Collectors and managed to destroy the core of the new Reaper human monstrosity, putting an end to the twisted experiment. Before departing, Shepard is contacted by the Elusive Man, the leader of Cerberus, which is the aforementioned shady organisation who resurrected Shepard from the grave and has been assisting in their missions throughout the events of Mass Effect 2. The Elusive Man provides Shepard with two options. Either they can continue with the plan to blow up the Collector base, or the whole place can be sterilised with radiation, causing all enemies inside to perish, whilst leaving the base behind and allowing Cerberus to reach the dangerous technology within.
So James, in this playthrough, I ended up actually preserving the base with my renegade approach. I figured Cerberus could have their new play toy, and I decided to flood the place with radiation. What about yourself, I assume, given our massively divergent playthroughs?
My paragon Julius, man of the people, war hero that he is, was like, F*** you, Elusive Man.
You too shady. I can't trust you.
I never trusted you, but, thanks for rebuilding me and but I never trusted you. And I blew that out.
After arriving back on Shepard's ship, the Normandy, we are greeted by an ominous image of a giant Reaper fleet descending towards our galaxy. Clearly, the defeat of our Collector foes has gotten the attention of the Reapers, and this marks the beginning of our story in Mass Effect 3. The actual story of Mass Effect 3 begins roughly 6 months following the events which have just been described, with our hero, Shepard, now relieved of duty and awaiting court-martial by the Alliance due to blowing up a Mass Effect relay. The destruction of the relay was successful in holding off the Reaper invasion, however it also inadvertently caused the death of around 30,000 Batarians. Oopsie.
In your case, it probably wasn't inadvertent.
Yeah,
I like to think in
true,
your
yeah.
character's lore, it's just like, the Batarians.
Do it, yeah. I hate those guys. F***ing four-eyed freaks.
It's like 6 eyes, isn't it?
Oh, God knows.
They got a lot of eyes.
Too many eyes. Too many eyes to trust.
You don't like Turians either. I remember this from Mass Effect 1. Space racist. Should have kept Ashley alive.
I should have. Honestly, we'll get into that a little bit later. I am regretting my decision a little bit.
I know what you're going to say, yeah.
Anyway, if you ask me, Shepard probably actually did those Batarians a favour, given that the Reapers were closing in on them, and their fate would have perhaps been worse had we stood by and done nothing.
If that helps you sleep at night, mate, then that's fine.
So all of these events that I've just spoken about were actually covered in the Arrival DLC, which we didn't go over during our coverage of Mass Effect 2, so just kind of bridging the gap there a little bit.
The disgraced Commander Shepard, or for now just Shepard, or Shep, we'll go with whatever. Might Julius, Gillian, could be whatever.
It's a bit overly familiar for me. I always demand that people call me Shepard at the bare minimum. Commander Shepard preferred.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. But either way, Shepard waits in their quarters in Vancouver on the planet Earth before being joined by a new character in this game, going by the name of James Vega. I'll say at this point, it's really weird reading James because I've always called him Vega. I've always called him Vega. So it's really weird.
Shep always calls him James in the cutscenes that I've experienced so far.
Yeah, no,
so,
I know. It's a me thing. I think because I'm called James.
Yeah.
So it's just like, no, this guy.
Yeah, just to be clear, a lot of the time in this script, if we're talking about James, we're talking about James Vega, the video game James, not the video game James podcast host guy.
Yeah.
Trying to clear up that confusion.
James, not Bames, we'll go with. But James tells Shepard that they have been summoned to a meeting by the Defence Committee. On their way to the meeting, we are also joined by our old friend. Well, you've written Captain Anderson, Admiral Anderson, dear boy. He's been promoted.
Oh, of course, I did forget. Yes,
but no, fair play. He'll always be Captain Anderson to me as well. I'd forgotten until I started playing Mass Effect 3 again, I won't lie. But Anderson tells us that the Alliance are beginning to mobilise their fleets in response to something big that's heading their way. At this point, Shepard guesses the Reapers have finally arrived. However, everyone else is reluctant to believe that the greatest threat to humanity has finally appeared, despite all of our warnings in the prior games.
They just never listen. Frustrating.
And it's funny, even Paragon Shep is like proper pissed about it, like the same as my Renegade Shep was. It's like, why didn't they just f***ing listen? Before we enter the meeting, we also bump into an old crewmate of ours, Caden Alenko, now promoted to a major within the Alliance. Major Alenko.
Major Alenko, Major Wanker. Tired of his bullshit as well.
The person we both decided to save, I think for probably the same reason. I just don't like Ashley.
Ashley was an annoying space racist.
And I've got a soft spot for Caden because the voice of Caden is the voice of Carthanassi from KOTOR 1.
Knights of the Old Republic, yeah.
So I've got a soft spot for Caden, but I know what you're going to say. And
he's just too suspicious of me and he questions my authority, and Shep does not appreciate that.
Yeah. And he's kind of boring.
It's not so much that, it's genuinely the disrespect and questioning my authority that Caden keeps on doing that is just intolerable to Gillian Shepard.
Oh, yeah. Because he still doesn't trust you because you work with Cerberus.
Yeah, I'm just like, move past it, buddy. That shit's in the past. I am your commander. So back to the story. Alliance Command informed Shepard that there were some very concerning reports coming in during his meeting with the Defence Committee. And contact has actually been lost with many colonies beyond the nearest relay. Shepard confirms everyone's worst fear that the Reapers have clearly returned, and as the threat is being discussed, word comes in that contact has just been lost with Earth's moon base, signalling that the threat is drawing closer and closer to home. We also see footage of the United Kingdom on Earth showing hordes of Reapers destroying cities, and as the meeting draws to a close, a large Reaper craft appears just outside the room we're in, and a large red laser punches through the wall, causing massive damage to the building and killing lots of people inside. We regroup with Admiral Anderson and make our way to escape on the Normandy.
Shepard and Anderson fight their way past attacking husks, which, if you remember, are synthetic organic zombies created by Reapers from the bodies of captured humans, the ones that get their life sucked out of them on the big spike. Looks gruesome.
Brutal.
In this section, we also fight enemies known as cannibals, which resemble the husks but a lot stronger and bulky, preferring to use weapons rather than the basic melee attack of the husks. As Shepard and Anderson hold off a growing number of husks and cannibals, the Normandy passes over and radios for us to evacuate. Shepard jumps aboard, however Captain Anderson decides to stay behind to continue to fight off the invasion. And it's notable also what happens just before we jump on the ship. There's a moment where we find a small child in a vent. The kid sort of seems very scared of us. We offer to get them out, help them, and the kid's just like, no.
I screamed at the kid to get out of here, so that was my approach.
Anderson's like, come on, we gotta go. We turn away for 1 second, kid's disappeared. Strange. Also notable because as we get on the ship and leave, we've just got on the ship and we're just saying goodbye to Anderson, basically. As we're saying goodbye, he hands Shepard a set of dog tags and reinstates us to the Alliance military. And Shepard decides that they must travel to the Citadel to speak to the Council and request aid from the other alien races in fighting the Reaper threat, despite wanting to stay and help defend Earth. Just as we're leaving, we see the kid that we saw in the vent get into one of the shuttles that's being evacuated, and we see that shuttle get destroyed. Brutal stuff. Really has a profound effect on our character. Maybe mine, not yours.
Is the reason that you're choosing to bring it up because that's the... Is there some sort of... Does it tie back to it throughout the game?
I'm not going to tell you anything else, but it's worth mentioning.
Okay, fine. Now on board the Normandy, we are contacted by the Alliance Admiral Hackett, who tells us that we need to head to an Alliance outpost on Mars where we need to meet with another old friend, Liara Tassoni, who thinks she has discovered something to help us fight the Reapers. Perhaps some sort of ancient Prothean weapon? As we work our way towards the Prothean archives on Mars, joined by Caden and James, we encounter some trigger-happy Cerberus assault troopers who are busy executing workers on the planet. It seems we're not the only ones interested in this newly discovered technology to fight against the Reapers. Fighting our way past Cerberus' forces, we finally run into Liara Tassoni, who confirms that she has discovered plans for a Prothean device which has the power to help us in our fight against the enemy.
We must now travel with Liara into the archives to retrieve the weapon plans, but that's not going to be an easy task. Cerberus is hot on our tail and it's a race to the archives. Shepard orders James to head back and cover the exits while Shepard, Kaidan and Liara make their way fighting through large squads of Cerberus troopers to get deeper into the archives. The team spot a suspicious woman through a monitor screen. The woman is wearing a Cerberus outfit, holding a pistol and is hurriedly interfering with a console. Liara identifies the woman as Dr. Eva Kor, who arrived a week prior to this attack. At this point it's pretty clear that Cerberus have been aided in their mission by sneakily installing one of their employees at the archives just before the assault. They've got a mole.
Shortly after the team are stalled by Cerberus locking them out of the tram system, Kaidan removes the Cerberus soldier's helmet and discovers the trooper's eyes are glowing blue in a similar fashion to the husk zombies we've encountered previously.
And the Elusive Man.
Yeah, and Saren in the first bit of the game as well. Cerberus has obviously been up to no good since the last time we crossed paths with them. Shepard is able to use the helmet to radio a nearby Cerberus squad and lures them to come collect our team by pretending to be a friendly squad seeking extraction.
We finally arrive inside the archive and are greeted by a hologram communication from the Elusive Man, the boss of Cerberus. Like us, he is convinced that the tools the Protheans left behind are the key to defeating the Reapers. Unlike our leanings towards destroying the Reapers, the Elusive Man wants to use the technology to control and dominate them instead, in hopes of bringing humanity to, in his terms, the apex of evolution. The time to reflect on this revelation is cut short when Liara tells us that the files are no longer in the archive, and are in fact being erased and uploaded by a local source. As the team explore the area, we discover our Cerberus spy, Dr. Eva Kor, and chase her through the halls of the facility.
Our chase leads us to the rooftops, where a Cerberus drop shuttle, also known as a Kodiak, swoops in to collect Dr. Eva. Just in the nick of time, James comes hurtling along in our own Kodiak and collides with the escaping Cerberus vehicle, sending it hurtling back towards us, with the wreckage nearly smushing our squad. A good thing for James that it missed, as I'm pretty sure killing your commander and 2 fellow squad members on their first real outing together would result in one hell of an Alliance court-martial. Following the crash resulting in a burning wreckage, we assume that all is clear and start to dust ourselves off. Just in time for a sexy and very voluptuous robot lady to burst out from the wreckage and race towards our crew. Is this Dr. Eva, James?
Yes. Or it's what's left of Dr. Eva.
Right, okay, that's good. I just wanted to... there was a tiny question mark over my head whether that was the one and the same, and I'm glad that you've answered that for me.
Kaidan is immediately grabbed and lifted into the air by the silver-skinned cybernetic Dommy mummy. As she holds him, she waits for the Elusive Man to confirm her orders, to which she is ordered to dispose of our crewmate. And Kaidan is then rather unceremoniously and repeatedly smashed into the side of the destroyed ship before haphazardly being dropped to the ground. The robot makes a desperate dash towards Shepard, but we are successfully able to disable it before it manages to do more harm. A nice little slow-mo piece there.
Yeah, like some f***ing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 bullshit.
Yeah, it reminded me more of like, you know, when someone's raging and there's like a slow motion of them screaming and just firing bullets. That's the sort of imagery I got from it.
I was getting a breach and clear set piece from Call of Duty.
that too. Yeah, that's fair enough. Shepard, James and Liara retrieve our fallen comrade Kaidan and the incapacitated robot lady, because of course you're going to take the sexy robot lady with you.
Yeah, don't leave her behind, one of them.
Of course you're... I need that.
I need that for later.
Yeah. We then make a race towards the Citadel, in part because it is where the Council resides and we need their help, but also because Kaidan is in dire need of medical facilities.
So at this point in the level, there's a couple of things that you can do, namely go straight towards the council and convince them to help, but you can also stop to pay your buddy Kaidan a visit. I wanted to bring this up, James, because I gotta be honest, I was really fed up with Kaidan at this point, constantly disrespecting me and questioning my authority and my decision making. So I've just left him in the hospital and I've gone over to speak to the council. So did you go and visit your buddy in the wing?
Of course I did. I did.
Yeah. So what happens there then? Fill me in.
He's in a coma.
Oh, right, okay.
But you have like a little chat with him.
In a coma?
Yeah, like, you know, you're just like talking to him, sort of like, if you can hear me.
Oh, right, okay.
Type thing. And I was obviously very nice. I picked the nice option, like, you know, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but, you know, we've been through a lot and all the, you know, all this positive stuff. I think there was one where you'd be like, don't you fucking die on me, you dick.
Oh, okay.
So you could still have been a renegade had you done it. But it's the start of a side quest type thing that you probably don't want to do, so it's fine.
Fair
I don't think it's a spoiler to say that it's to get him instated back as a recruitable crewmate.
I had a feeling that might be the thing, and that's why I just had no interest in bothering with it.
You probably don't care, because you get more sort of side missions to be like, oh, you can go check on Caden now, he's awake, sort of thing.
Right.
But you might still get that stuff, but no, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But I did go there first.
Fine.
Said hi to Caden, bought an extra Metagel thing. Pretty much he was asleep, so he was very he wasn't really contributing to the conversation, let's just say. But then I went to the council chambers.
Okay. So let's get on to that. So the council are made up of representatives from each of the 4 member species, the Turians, Solarians, Asari, and humans, and they form the governing body of the Citadel. So, as instructed by Admiral Anderson and Admiral Hackett, Shepard meets with the council to ask for their help against the Reaper threat. Despite the fact Earth is undergoing a full-scale assault, Shepard is unable to convince the majority of the council members to agree to help the humans fight back. They're obviously too preoccupied with the struggles of their own races and won't lend any aid to us.
After the council meeting, Shepard is approached by the Turian council representative, who seems to want to help us. He suggests that a Turian Primarch, in layman terms a Turian leader, could be convinced to put in a good word to the council for us. The Turian representative goes on to say that the Primarch, known as Fedorian, is a big supporter of extreme solutions, and his views will hold sway with the council's ultimate decision. Unfortunately, Fedorian wasn't able to escape the Palavan system, the homeworld of the Turians, before the Reapers attacked, and he is now stranded on Palavan's largest moon awaiting rescue. Before leaving us, the Turian council member reinstates our Spectre status. For me, the whole council did, before the Turian came back, because I was...
Oh, I see.
Because I saved them in the first one. Granting us several perks and additional resources to help us in our missions.
So at this point in the game, as you're heading off to the planet, you actually enter another dream sequence where you're following the child that James mentioned earlier, that we initially encountered in the vent, and then saw get blown up, trying to escape Earth. So you're kind of walking through a wooded area, and there's a kid crying a lot around, and I was kind of just following it through the woods. I was got to say, I kind of at this point in the game, there was a couple kind of niggles that I already had with the game, and I was enjoying some of the slower set piecey things less. So I guess the only reason why I thought to include this bit here was just to say that it took me out of the game a little bit, and I just wanted to hurry on with the rest of the game. But it sounds like there might be some sort of profound revelation coming or something that affects Shepard.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. I didn't like the pacing of this bit because you can't sprint in it. You can't really skip anything in it. You just have to follow the kid. And then it's just an interactive cutscene.
It was one of the first times that the game has actually done stuff like that. They have absolutely made this game more cinematic, and in some ways it benefits from it. But then in other bits like this, I find that the pace of the game just drops through the floor. It's a bit of an odd one.
I will say persevere. It is a theme.
Right, okay.
I don't know if the payoff's really worth it, but it is a thing.
Okay, right, okay, yeah, we'll see.
Because I can't remember most of it, but I do remember that there's at least one more dream, and then there's some other stuff that goes down.
Right, okay.
But yeah, I agree with you completely. The pacing of it is really weird, and it's kind of done in between you doing like a couple of major missions. It's really odd.
Also, outside of the main missions of the game, I also met my new specialist, Samantha Trainer, who I actually assumed was my new specialist, given that my old one, I think her name was... Oh, God, I can't remember her name. Was it Helena?
Kelly Chambers.
Kelly. Oh, that was it. Kelly! Yeah, Kelly. Yeah. Good old Kelly. And she got murdered. No one made it.
In your one?
Pretty much. The main crew of the Normandy all got...
Fucking Shaquist died in your one.
Yeah. Everyone died in my one, pretty much. Except for Samantha Trainer. She is now in this one, and she's my new assistant.
She wasn't in two, to even have a chance of getting killed.
Oh, I thought she was meant to be like crew, but she was kind of like skeleton crew that didn't really work there, and like she wasn't actually... I think she says something to you, like the majority of the crew weren't on the Normandy at the time. So I thought she was kind of like a house elf.
If you talk to her more, you find out that she's actually... She's part of the crew that was assigned to rebranding the Normandy, basically, after Cerberus, because it's a Cerberus ship.
Yeah, she says that she's like stripped out all the Cerberus parts and things like that.
Yeah, and redone it all and made it up to Alliance spec. And then because it was so sudden that Shepard was reinstated and they had to leave Earth, basically everyone that was on the ship just became the crew.
Right. Okay. I think I misunderstood that then, because I did bother to speak to her. I did like sort of I was trying to find out more about her character because. I was interested to meet my new assistant. I also kind of wanted to know whether this was a character that was unique to my game or not, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
It's not the case, no.
So where's Kelly in your game?
She's on the Citadel and helping out refugees.
Oh, right, okay, fine.
And you get a choice of you can either tell her to carry on helping the refugees or insist that she changes her identity first. And changing her identity is actually the renegade option, but I pick it because I know that's the one that makes her survive.
Right, okay.
If you pick the first one, she carries on going by Kelly Chambers. She has that distinct red hair, as you remember. Yeah. Eventually, Cerberus find and kill her.
Oh, right, okay.
If you get her to change her identity, her hair becomes blonde. She changes her name to like Felicia or something like that. And then she can carry on working with the refugees at the Citadel. It's a nothing thing, but it's just quite a nice touch. She also gave me back my fish. Because she always looks after your fish in Mass Effect 2.
Right, okay.
And because you still had the fish tank, she's like, I saved all your fish, here they are.
Oh, that's cool, that's interesting. Yeah, because I was looking at my completely empty fish tank, wondering where they'd all gone. And that makes sense. I guess that's an opportunity I won't have in this one.
Did you get the space hamster in 2 as well?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, okay. You can buy a space hamster in 2 and you find it running around where Jack used to hang out at the bottom of the
really?
And you can
Well,
pick it up
cool.
and get that back, yeah. And did you buy the model ships in Mass Effect 2 as well?
I did definitely bought one model ship. I don't know if I bought a collection of them.
You can find them in the Normandy and then they come back.
Right, okay.
It's quite cool.
Okay. Yeah, no, I have definitely not been kind of doing a very completionist run on this in terms of engaging with all of the shopbot stuff.
Oh no, but that's just because I'm a loser and I like my captain's cabin to be full of everything.
I've been kind of very much role-playing this character as well, and I just kind of consider that a renegade shepherd just wouldn't do that stuff. Like, wouldn't go see Caden in hospital and wouldn't show, like, an undue amount of interest in anyone other than the main people that they need to manipulate and get on board, sort of thing.
Yeah. You see, whereas Julius is a mark. So he'll just like try and save everyone, go see everyone. He's worried about his model ship collection.
Even if it seems like a trap, he'll still wade in, sort of thing, just because obviously you're gonna win eventually. It was a pretty big ask for Gillian to even bother with all the loyalty missions, I'll be honest.
I'm surprised you still have the Normandy. I honestly didn't think in your Mass Effect 2 run that you'd even bother like getting all the upgrades.
I wanted to get the upgrades, more power, more better, but that was about it.
So, and speaking of new technology on board the Normandy, the other notable sort of change to the game that you may as well mention at this point, now we've unlocked space travel somewhat, is that as opposed to where in Mass Effect 2 where you just go and scan loads of planets and you'd get loads of resource points that you could send a scanner down to, you now have a ship pulse system, whereby you enter a system, you press a button and your ship will pulse and you can pick up things on your scanner. It can be simple items such as extra fuel, but it can also be sort of places of interest or assets, which we'll get onto a bit later. And what's interesting is on the map, some of the systems have a little Reaper over them. And in those systems, if you do the scanner too many times, the Reapers can become aware of you and then eventually enter the system you're in and chase you down. And if they catch you, it's game over.
Oh, it's game over. Okay, I was wondering about that.
Allegedly, I've never been caught.
Right. Oh, okay.
I think it's game over.
It does say that when they enter the system, you're supposed to leave, complete a mission, and they'll have probably disappeared by that point.
You don't even need to complete a mission, I don't think. I think you can just doss around for a bit in other systems, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, and what it does ultimately is it makes things a lot quicker. But the way they've reshaped resources and changed it to assets, which as I say, we'll get onto a bit later, it's a lot more streamlined, a lot less grindy.
I really liked it. I thought it was a cool concept that if you want to, grind and try and explore every little thing, the game's not going to make it easy for you either. They're going to put Reapers in your systems and make you think about how you explore stuff. Cool idea.
Although I will say it's still quite easy, so don't worry about it too much, guys. It's not too bad. You can get away from the Reapers quite easily.
So in our continuing search for Primarch Fedorian, on entering the system, we can see that Palaven is being bombarded by a Reaper attack, with countless explosions and fiery battles taking place in the orbit of the planet. The defending Turians are certainly taking a beating from the onslaught of the Reapers, and Shepard arrives on base and meets with General Corinthus, who tells us that Primarch Fedorian is actually dead, killed just about an hour ago as his shuttle tried to leave the moon. The Turian hierarchy dictates that the responsibility of Primarch will now fall to another Turian on the moon, so Shepard sets out to find the next Primarch somewhere else.
Before we set out, a familiar voice sounds behind us, offering to help us find the next Primarch. It's my favourite squad mate, my guy, my bud, the man who accompanies me on all my missions in every single playthrough, Garrus Vakarian, the Turian legend, Archangel, whatever you want to call him.
That's right, and he miraculously survived my campaign, so I got to see him again too.
Oh, that's good. I would have been very emotional if Garrus wasn't in your game. That would have been such a shame for you. You just stuck with Caden, no Garrus.
Oh my god, I don't know what I'd do. Yeah. Well, no, Caden's currently in a coma and I'm leaving him there.
Word from Palaven Command comes in to let us know that the next Primarch is a Turian general by the name of Adrian Victus, who, much like his predecessor, also favours a somewhat brash military approach. Very renegade, in fact, so I can imagine that Will and him will get on very well.
Yeah, immediately I'm thinking, this sounds like just the man for the job. We'll get along famously.
We're also radioed by the pilot of the Normandy, and another familiar face from the previous games, our old partner Joker. Joker lets us know that the Normandy is experiencing some strange faults with its systems, and he isn't able to locate the source of the problem. Liara offers to travel back to the Normandy to investigate, leaving us with our squad mates for this mission, James and Garrus.
Throughout this mission, Shepard fights against the attacking Reaper ground forces, mainly composed of husks and cannibals, with one notable exception, the Brutes. So these guys are like a giant lumbering charging enemy with brutally fast melee attacks, and they serve as the mini-boss for a few of the firefights in this level, mostly due to their very chunky health bar.
That's a bit of a grandiose term, mini-boss. They do become mobs later.
After defeating a particularly difficult section involving a variety of enemies, including 2 brutes, we finally rendezvous with Primarch Victus, and we manage to convince him to leave us to chair a summit and lead the Turians to war against the Reapers. Time to head back to the Normandy with our 2 new Turian buddies, and at that point, I think we'll leave it here for this week. Find out about the continuing adventures of Shepard and the crew in episode 74.
We're off. Off to the races, it's begun.
Prologue well and truly completed. Time to get into the meat of things.
Yes, and I think it's worth just quickly discussing some of the changes to Mass Effect from Mass Effect 2 to 3.
Is there anything particularly that you wanted to get started on?
Well, I think because we've already mentioned it, it might be worth starting off with the way they've done resources in this game. So in previous games, you scan planets, as we said, collect elements, minerals, all this good stuff, and it can be used to buy upgrades and things like that.
Yeah.
In this game, upgrades are purely done by credits, the money in the game, and instead of scanning for minerals and things, you scan for things that are called war assets. And this can be anything from workers to help build this mysterious Prothean weapon that we found the tools for. You can find workers to help on that. You can find various legendary troops. You can find squads, and it's just all adds to your war asset counter, which can be tracked in a special terminal in a room on the Normandy, which you need to get over a certain level as the game progresses to be able to actually even have a chance against the Reapers.
That's right, yes. A little bar fills up with a marker that's your bare minimum war assets needed before you can take them on.
What's neat about this as well is that it contains a bunch of things that reference back to things you've done in 1 and 2.
Okay.
So some of the basic, I won't go into all of them obviously, but one of the ones that I think will be quite different for you and I is because I, in Mass Effect 1, decided to save the Council, 3 of my Alliance battle fleets have a third less troops because they all died saving the Council.
Right, okay.
But because it's Mass Effect, there's always a trade-off. My trade-off was that the Council survived, and I'm sure there's another trade-off coming. I'm sure something positive will happen from it. But in your one, I bet it doesn't have that updated message and you've got a full set of human squadrons, but you won't get what I get later.
Sure thing, that makes sense.
You see what I mean? And I like how that all links back. And because a lot of your crewmates died, you're not going to have... Jack died in your one, I think.
They did, sadly.
So you're not going to have Jack as a war asset and things like that. Just quite a nice little touch, I thought.
Yeah, I imagine, given all the crazy shit I did in Mass Effect 2, the amount of allies that I've got that are either willing to trust me or still alive is pretty dwindling at this point.
Yeah, you're going to have some fun with that, I think. It's going to be really interesting to see. And as I mentioned earlier, it just makes everything a lot more streamlined. It's a lot more user-friendly, a lot less grindy. Typically, there's only, certainly in the planets I've explored so far, or the systems I've explored, there's only 2 resources per system. And it just makes... the grind of doing that, if you're a min-maxer like I am that just wants to get as much resource as possible, it just makes that a lot easier, which I appreciate.
And for me, coming from the outside, it just gives me a sense that something really big's happening that I need to prepare for, and it's constantly looming that it's such a large objective in the game that I need to attain these war assets. I can see that even if it's not necessarily true, it's something that is definitely leading me to believe I really need to prepare for this big fight coming. and I'm buying into it. I like it.
Are there any sort of new systems that you particularly enjoyed so far?
Yeah, actually. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and it's something that I'm sure we've talked about off pod and on pod together, something that I've been keen to explore in Mass Effect 3. Just the kind of increases in terms of environmental mantling, climbing over objects, movement options, just little things like that, like being able to double tap a button to hop over cover quickly rather than having to take cover behind it and then slowly press the button to jump over, which you can do now. You've even got things like a dodge roll, which I definitely wasn't expecting. It's kind of suddenly feeling a lot closer to Gears of War than it's ever done before. It's one of those things where they almost didn't need to do that. Like, I'm glad that they did. That's something that I wouldn't have necessarily asked for in a Mass Effect game. I was surprised to see it included in this one, but it's only a good thing as well. Extra maneuverability is always good.
What do you think of the Division style run from cover to cover as well?
That was a cool little thing. It's a little clunky, more so than Division, obviously. But, you know, it's cool that it's in there. It definitely works a lot better. I also really liked the Gears of War style. If you're on a cover and an enemy is hiding on the opposite side of that cover, or even just standing by it, you can grab them, yank them over the cover, and kind of assassinate them, which is
Omni-blade
cool
the shit out of them.
Yeah, I really like that. That's very neat.
Yeah, I never use it, but it's really cool that it's there. Because I'm a sniper, so when am I going to use that? But it's really cool.
Fair play. I mean, there are like a couple set piece moments where like they give you the opportunity to do it, but yeah, it's by no means like a revolutionary thing. It's just a nice thing to have.
Not something you'd necessarily expect from Mass Effect, having played the first two games.
And speaking of that as well, the upgraded melee punch, because melee was always pretty weak, I will say, in Mass Effect. Not necessarily in terms of power. You could do some pretty good damage with it if you spec'd in the right directions, but it was more just that the animation was a bit weak. It never felt like it had much impact. A lot of the time, enemies didn't always physically react to it either. So it was a bit of a mixed bag. Whereas in this one, if you hold the melee button, you can do a charged biotic blast, which often sends people ragdolling. So that's quite a notable improvement as well.
I imagine that's probably your specific one.
Oh, is it my specific one? What have you got?
I'm not a biotic, so I don't know. I've not done a charged attack, so I don't know.
Right, okay. Yeah, give it a go. I get the feeling that that is a standard thing across the game. I don't think that is a class-specific thing. Happy to hear otherwise, but I get the feeling that is just one of those, like, they put that for all the characters.
You might be right, but yeah, I when my melee attack is I hit them with my gun.
Yeah, same as mine. Yeah, my one's just a boring melee attack like that. Try it next time you're playing. I'll be interested to see if they shoot a thing out their hand that's just like a repulsor blast a bit. Interesting.
Well, mine could be tech, because I'm an infiltrator, so I could have a tech one that basically is the same, but maybe a different color or something.
Yeah, it was just like it was a tutorial section in the game where it clearly wants you to like attack an enemy with a bit more range than normal. In your game, you probably just shot it. But if you let the tutorial thing play out, it wants you to charge your punch and learn that attack. And it's a cool little feature. It definitely just adds a bit more depth to when you run up to an enemy, you don't just limply punch it now. You can kind of knock it off its feet and do a bit more damage, which is fun.
Always good.
And I guess the only other thing that I wanted to mention that I noticed that was new from Mass Effect 2 is that the skill trees diverge a little bit. Some of your different skills in the game, you actually make a choice between, for instance, going towards like an area of effect bonus or a damage bonus. Mass Effect 2 did have like a kind of a more basic version of this where the final skill point you would assign to one of two options, and they would typically be like a elemental chance effect up versus raw power up or something like that, sometimes affecting another target. That happens a little bit earlier in your skill trees in Mass Effect 3. I think after the 4th or 5th skill point, you start making choices between what direction you want your different abilities to go in the game. A very minor thing, but welcome change. Cool thing to see.
Yeah, nice, because you can do it for your companions as well. So if you have companions with similar powers, you can make them a little bit different.
Absolutely right. It's cool to see two sides of the same skill tree with different characters. I was doing that on Mass Effect 2. If I noticed two characters had the same things, then I would max out their powers and then experiment with which of the alternate options was better. And I'll probably do that to some degree in Mass Effect 3 as well.
Yeah, and speaking of powers, did you start the game with loads of skill points?
Started the game with like 25 skill points, I think, for Shepard. It was around that number. And pretty much all of my powers unlocked with half of the skill trees filled up as well. I had all of my biotic powers, really. Yeah,
you had your old skill tree and all the skill points. I just before I'd finished my save, I wiped it, so I reset my skills. So I had 61 skill points.
Oh my god, damn.
It's just like with nothing filled though. So I probably had similar to what you had.
Yeah.
But I was able to just re-pick my skill tree based on the new skills.
That's cool.
Nice touch.
I gotta say, I was feeling very powerful in this game. I don't recall there being a difficulty select before I started this game. and I was absolutely stomping through the early game, and I was just not finding it fun enough. Those biotic powers are just so powerful early on that I had to whack the game up to hard difficulty. To like feel like I'm actually not just absolutely walking through the game.
It's in your settings. Yeah, you're right. I don't know there's an option right at the start, but you can change it in settings.
I'm enjoying the game a lot more as a result of playing it on a harder difficulty. I think I've played them all on hard so far.
I thought you said you dropped down to normal for 2.
You might be right. I think there maybe was a section in 2 that I dropped down to normal, maybe.
That might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I know you played 1 hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there must have been. I think you're right. I think there was a section that I put it down to normal. But for this one, I've popped it up to hard. And I'm not beyond switching it down after a particularly tricky bit. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm kind of enjoying the challenge that mode is giving me. I actually occasionally have to take cover and think about my attacks a bit more rather than just mindlessly firing everything I've got all the time.
I'm just keeping it on normal so that I can do all of the content.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, it's probably a good one.
Efficient. I know what you mean, though.
You don't want to get stuck on a section if you're bothering with all the side content, whereas I'm kind of beelining slightly. I'm definitely not beelining, but I'm following the main campaign a lot more, so I think if I get stuck on a section, it'll probably level out in terms of playtime a bit. But I think with all that said, that pretty much wraps up our coverage of Mass Effect 3 for this week. And with that, I think it's probably time to close off the show as well. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on X by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPF.
And you can find me at WhoDaFunk on X, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/WhoDaFunk. And just with a final New Year's message for our listeners, thank you for sticking around and supporting the podcast. We really do appreciate you. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, and if you haven't done so already, please drop us a like and subscribe on the various social medias we just listed there. If you'd like to check out some of the video content for this podcast, we post that on our YouTube channel, and I'll actually be posting part of my run-throughs of Mass Effect 3 on the YouTube channel there. So if you want more Total Pod Mode content, that is definitely the place to be. And hey, whilst you're there and feeling supportive, why not drop us a 5-star rating on our various podcast platforms as well? Spotify and Apple Podcasts would make the biggest difference to us. We really do appreciate all the ratings we've received so far. And please, guys, if you want to support the podcast, that is the best way of doing it.
Agreed, and we'd really appreciate it.
Okay, James, I think it's time that we closed off the episode. Thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Take care, everyone. Goodbye.